we moved to South Africa, we were independent, which meant that we were not with the Southern Baptist missionary group. Been Southern Baptist all my life, but God just didn't call us that way. So, and we were faithful to Him. So we were independent. The money that we had when we went over, we had been and visited South Africa and Zimbabwe twice before, and had stayed there several weeks, and thought we knew kind of what it took to live. They were very simple, very simple ways. We lived in Johannesburg when we first moved there. But once you get there, you realize that living in a place and visiting a place is very different. Because when you start living somewhere, it takes a lot of money. And two of our children were with us, and they were going to school, and it was uniforms, and you had to pay school fees that, of course, we knew nothing about until we got there, and it was very different things. Fred was an itinerant evangelist and went from city to city preaching and taking care. I stayed home with the children most of the time to keep law and order and send them to school and those kinds of things. So he would drive to wherever he was going. Sometimes it was a village, sometimes it was another town. South Africa is very unique in that it is a first and third world country all in one. They have beautiful big cities, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, Bloemfontein, that are just like Atlanta, just about. But then, as he said, 80% of the people don't live in the cities, they live in the bush, in villages and different places with the natives. So we had been there 8 or 9 months, and quite honestly, most everything we had taken with us was gone. If I'm not mistaken, at that time, we had about $8 grand and 20 some odd cents left. And Fred was leaving to go to a town that was about 4 or 5 hours away, taking our one car and driving there to preach for the week. And I knew that he would get paid. It was a white church, and I knew that they would pay him at the end, and then we would have some money when he came home. But that Saturday that before he left, we came together and sat at our dining room table and prayed and said, kind of, this is how it is. And so we had milk and eggs and bread, I think, in the refrigerator, and that was about all. Well, he always said that I was like the children of Egypt. Israel. We would get, I'll get it right, would go out into the desert, and I would look back and say, here you have brought us out here, and all the leeks and garlics are back in Egypt, and here we are roaming in the desert eating, manna from heaven. But that didn't go very far when you had 2 children that you were trying to feed. So you can't be mad with him, which, of course, it was his fault, but and you certainly can't be mad at God for bringing you there. So I was pretty mad at him, quite honestly. And so he left, took our car. There we were in Johannesburg. The kids walked to school. And so we were there by ourselves. Well, on that, Tuesday, when Renee, our daughter, was coming home from school, I was sitting out on the sun porch in the home where we were living, because that was the warmest place. Johannesburg is 6,000 feet in elevation, so in the winter it's cold. The coldest I have ever been. People want to know, does it get cold in Africa? Yes. The coldest I've ever been has been in Africa. You can snow on the mountains. It's cold. And there's no heater and air there, no electric space heaters to keep in the house. It's just cold. You climatize, but you learn how to dress. But anyway, I was sitting on the sun porch because that was the warmest place that we had in the house because of the sun, and that's where we would sit and do homework and spend most of our time was on the sun porch. And Renee was coming in from school, and she came by the fence that led into our house where their post box was, And she opened it and brought the mail in, the post is what they call it. And so while I was sitting there, and she came running up to the house, and she had a white envelope in her hand. And she was running in, and she came, Mama, Mama, look, somebody's left us some money. And so I took the envelope out of her hand, and it had our name and address on the front of the envelope, but there was no postmark on it, no stamp that it had been through the mail, that someone had just came and put it in our post box there at the house. So of course, with him doing revivals and in the areas, a lot of times churches in our area would do brochures or pamphlets or something to pass out. And I thought, well, I said, no, Renee, it's just, one of the pastors has just gotten some pamphlets or something. They want to let Pop know, that's what they call it, Pop know what, so he can look at them and approve them before they print, a whole bunch of them. And she said, no, Mama, it's money. Now, this is a white envelope with our name on it. That's it. There's no way that she can look in that envelope and tell what it is. So I open up the envelope and fold it in a white sheet of paper with nothing on it, nothing, just a white sheet of paper, was 28 50 rand notes.
Praise God.
Yes, like I say. So, and I still cry today, and it's been, 30 some odd years. Because I looked and I said, it's money. You're right. It's money. And I counted it probably 15 times, and I'm like, because that was a lot of money for us, a lot of money. And Renee said, well, Mama, it must have been the angels, because we don't know anybody that could give us this much money. And we didn't. The church that we were serving with was on the wrong side of town, had the wrong kind of people attending it. I mean, it was the down and outs and not the up and outs. And we did not know anyone that could give us that kind of money. But this is what I want to say to Brotherhood and WMU, because that in itself is a marvelous story. It was a miracle, beyond a shadow of a doubt. It was one of the very many miracles that God worked in our lives while we were there. But about 2 weeks later, I did receive a letter that had been sent through the post, and it came from the town where we were in Texas before we went to South Africa. And it was from a good friend, and she began it by saying, now remember, we've been here about 9 months now, and she said, I am so sorry that I have not been in touch. She said, but I hated to write and not be able to send anything, because I knew that probably needed. But she said, the Lord really spoke to me today, and I knew that I had to let you know that even though we have not been able to send any monetary gift, I wanted you to know that this morning at our church, and they were not Baptist, they were another denomination actually. She said, on Tuesday mornings, we have a 6 o'clock prayer meeting. She said, this morning, we spent most all of the hour praying for you and your ministry. When I look back, that was the day that the money showed up in our mailbox. And I have been to, like Fred said, I've been to WMU all my life, and I've heard people say, all they do is just go there and read out some names of missionaries and pray for them. Well, I can tell you, every one of those missionaries is thankful that there's some precious soul sitting in Brooklyn reading out a name and praying for them. Yes. Because that's what they need most. That's what we needed. We needed that prayer. And they were faithful to do that. And God supplied our needs. One of my favorite verses and chapters in the Bible is Psalms 103. And it says in verse 4, who redeems your life from the pit and crowns you with love and compassion, who satisfies your desires with good things, so your youth is renewed like an eagle's. Well, I can tell you that day, he satisfied my life with good things, because I knew that I could go to the grocery store and buy groceries and feed my children. I knew that I could give them money to go to the what they called the tuck shop, because they didn't have cafeterias, and buy something to eat at school that I had not been able to do. And I can tell you, I was in a pit when Fred left. And I had been in that pit feeling real sorry for myself. And God knew that. But God lifts you up from that pit when you need it. So ladies and gentlemen and children, when you're praying for missionaries, God hears every